Welcome everybody. My name's John Paulson. I'm the director of Hide and Seek. We're going to do the commentary. I have with me my two very esteemed colleagues. First of all, Ari Schlossberg, who's the screenwriter and the original genesis of this film, and Jeffrey Ford, our picture editor. We're going to talk to you for about 90 minutes about the making of the film. And I guess as good a place to start as any is with you, Ari. Let's talk a bit about how the story came about and the writing of the script.
Yeah, you know, there were so many different... It's almost like it came out through the characters themselves. They were the ones that kind of told me where to go. Usually you start off with, I know exactly what's going to happen, first act, second act, third act. In this one, I had an idea, but it didn't all come out until, you know...
As you were writing?
Yeah, it was an organic process for me. It still, like, was evolving, even through the drafts in the studio, you know?
Yeah. So how long was the whole process from when, you know, when you first sat down with a piece of paper and when we started shooting, I guess?
Wow, that would have to be, it was about a year, I would say 6 months of writing, then the spec went out.
And got a great response.
Got bought, and then it was about, what was it after that, around 6 months to a year. It was very quick to being greenlit and going, you know.
Yeah. And I have to say, from my point of view too, unlike a lot of movies, you know, although we did a few, call them production drafts or whatever, this, to your credit, I mean, this was the movie. What you see here, pretty much beginning, middle, and end, is the story the way I originally read it. And I think, you know, one of the things I do when I come onto a movie is read all of the drafts way back to the spec, and I think it's a tribute to your work that it you know, I mean, it changed a little in terms of, like, we changed character names occasionally, or we, you know, shifted things around, but it was pretty much this idea when...
Yeah, you know, there was a lot of notes, your notes, studio notes, you know, where you want to change things. And I think what I really tried to do here was keep the heart of the story involved. So yes, it would change some scenes here and there, and, you know, maybe change the ending, and, you know, it did go through changes, but the general idea, the heart, the structure of the story, you know, I think it remained constant, which, you know, I didn't want to give that up too. You know, that's what made it special.
You know where I was?
Not a clue. You want Alex?
I mean, just so people know, for me, you have a lot of collaborators as a filmmaker, but probably the one you're with the most and you end up having the closest creative bond with is, for me at least, the picture editor, because, you know, you sort of, in your case, Jeff, you know, you were reading early drafts of the script too. We went through pre-production together, obviously the shooting, you were on board, cutting the movie, and right through the post-production, and right through till now.
Yeah, well, we had a unique situation on this film. I got the job, I met with you and was hired, and then we had a bit of a push. There was a bit of a break. We had some time before we started shooting, which was great, because we got a chance to talk about everything that we wanted to do, so that was really helpful. And I remember reading the script initially, and the thing that really grabbed me was it has these very sort of primal, almost like fairy tale or dream ideas in it, and I think that's something that comes through in the final version too. It's really, you know, that was something that sort of was always present all the way through, and I think that was one of the first things that really grabbed me about the story. Is it's sort of this twisted dream movie or twisted fairy tale movie, even though it's set in real time and present, but there's all this sort of imagery, like the cave you'll see later and so forth.
Coming to bed.
So this is, on the screen right now, is obviously our prologue. Everything up till the suicide, I guess, we call the prologue, and both at script level and also at editing level, we did numerous versions of this. I mean, the first scene, for example, originally it was on the street, and then we have very short period of time to establish, hopefully, as strong a bond as possible between the mother and the daughter.
Right.
Because if that's not established, in a weird way, that's the motive for the rest of the movie, is how attached this girl is to her mother, and therefore how traumatized she is by the death. So we had, you know, 3-4 minutes of screen time to really try and nail that. And I think that's one of the reasons we moved it from the street, where it was in earlier drafts, to this kind of merry-go-round idea.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot, the opening scene, you know, of setting up this relationship between the mother and the daughter and showing him, in a sense, that he's not creepy, because you don't want to give away what's going, but not with them either. So it was interesting how we have him kind of walking in the distance, but kind of smiling, like he's all right, he's a nice guy. We don't want to give away, but at the same time, there's something. He's
kind of an outsider within his own family.
He's an outsider within his own family, and that was tricky.
And part of that too, Jeff, if you remember, we did numerous cuts of that first scene, some of which Bob De Niro was in, and some of them which he wasn't in. We ended up obviously keeping him in the scene, which I think was the best decision at the end. But I remember we fell in love with the idea for at least a month or two in the cutting process that this was...
Yeah, introducing him later.
Yeah,
that was an interesting approach to it.
It was really interesting because it made it feel like Amy Irving's film in a good way. It actually made the shock of her death much more powerful, but the casualty to that, I think, was obvious, and that's why.
I love this. I think this is really creepy, and you get the first sense of her emotion. I love that shit.
This was a tough.
I'm going into her eyes.
This is actually
Dakota,
a really tough scene to shoot. We had a full day to shoot the scene, which is kind of a luxury on any film, or certainly on a film with not a huge schedule, and yet it was a really tough scene. It's such a hard thing to do, even for someone at De Niro's level, to come to a bathroom and find your wife in a pool of blood. And I mean, he did an incredible job, but it's like, how the hell do you do that? And what we ended up doing, remember, Jeff, we sort of had a bit of a revelation in the cutting was, hey, what if we try and slow it down, which was never the plan.
Yeah, well, it made sense to make that moment attenuated and just to stretch it out, because ultimately it's going to be the thing that burns into Emily's mind, and it's going to be, like you said, the motive for a lot of things that happen. So I think that playing it in a more expressionistic way, in a stylized way, really, gets you inside Emily's head in a good way. I think it was a really good choice to do that.
And sound-wise, I remember one of the first things you did in like the editor's assembly, I think even as we were shooting, was put that kind of low rumble and take out the kind of natural sounds and put in a much more style, and that kind of freaked me out the first time I saw it. I thought it was really, we pretty much kept that idea right through to the final mix.
Yeah. And again, it's just more of the same thing. The imagery in the script that's about dreams and about this sort of other self and about a parallel sort of subconscious world that we are in touch with, but we're not in touch with. It all comes from that same central idea, and I think it works for that reason.
Right now, I need to do what's right for Emily.
This scene was tough. I mean,
I'm looking at it.
Yeah. This was, remember?
I mean, just starting with the writing of it. How many drafts and discussions do we have? Which angle? Do we use medical jargon in there? Do we not?
But one of the reasons is we've got so many things to accomplish there. We've got to introduce Catherine, which is going to become a major character in the movie. We've got to sort of somehow allude to their relationship, but almost more importantly, we've got to highlight what the sort of outcome has been of this traumatic experience, both for Emily and for De Niro. So it's kind of the three characters in the scene, and they've all got such, and usually, the scene is for one character maybe, and the other two are sort of supporting that. In this one, all three characters had a major part to play in the scene, and I think that was why it was so difficult.
Well, I mean, you also have to sell the fact that, hey, this guy's going to take his daughter and move and go, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And, it's almost like the simpler the better, which is the more you explain it, especially in the writing, this is why. The more questions the audience are going to ask, they go, wait a second. You almost just want to go, right to be like, this is the reason, and you're kind of like, oh, and you kind of go over it, not giving people enough time to really question, hey, is this a good thing? I mean, I think it is a good move. I think that this is what a father could do.
Yeah.
Who's to say they couldn't? But I think the more questions you know.
But I think it was always something we were all nervous about, including Fox, this idea of, is this guy doing the right thing by taking this girl to the country? Yeah. I mean, hopefully we sort of made it work, and it sort of balanced out okay, but it was always something we were all very nervous about. And I remember too, another challenge with that scene was, it was a long scene dialogue-wise, and it was, it's always hard with a long scene. There was a lot more dialogue
than what ended up there.
Yeah, we cut a lot of stuff out.
Again, like Ari said, we made it simple. Just get the pieces in there, because so much of it's being done visually too, with a cut to Emily. Emily's part of the scene, even though she says nothing. She's really, she's the elephant in the room. She's really there and part of it, which I think works really well visually.
I just want to comment on this, because This stuff here.
John loves these helicopter
I do
shots.
love these shots.
Because he was in the
love them
helicopter.
Because he was there.
Yeah, Jeff. I think I must have said it, Jeff, about 12 times. Yeah.
I'm like,
you
that
know, I
was
was there
really
that day. No, that was a lot of fun for me because I love flying, and we went up for like 8 or 10 hours in the chopper, which I didn't have to do. I think
I
normally
didn't
you
get the
send
spooky lettering.
Yeah, you did. In the final,
did?
you did.
I did?
Yeah, we put one up for you.
I like the credit. Okay, yes.
So as people watch this DVD, they're like, "What are you talking about? There's your spooky."
Oh,
You got
okay.
spooky lettering.
Yeah, I'm
right?
looking. Everybody's got, the spooky little things.
Everybody got it.
I mean, like, I would come in, to see you guys sometimes while you were hard at work, once in a while. But even that, which was just the titles, that seemed to be like so much work, and what direction you wanted to go, and what,
was
what
huge.
it just seemed, yeah.
I mean, every decision with a film it feels at least, so critical. I mean, you're right, the title sequence, we had it in, we had it out, we had it in. The reason we left it in, like you could have an hour-long discussion about that if you really wanted to bore people to tears, but the reason we left it in was it felt like it separated New York from the country, and without it, it felt like, okay, they moved up the road, what's the big deal, come home, or, but it really, as Jeff put it in the cutting, it really sort of made it feel like a major journey to get up there. David Chandler, who plays Mr. Haskins, and I think is sensational in this film. He's only got 3 or 4 scenes, but he's so good, and he's got a great look for this part, and he gets great response from audiences.
Well, the day of, I was there
When
in
we
New
were
York
auditioning.
at the time,
Yeah.
and John and I actually, when he came in and he did the we were so creeped out by him that we kept looking at each other like, oh my God, this guy's
perfect.
he's great,
Yeah. He was so good.
Yeah.
He nailed it.
I love Dylan Baker, too. He's
Well,
fantastic.
I mean,
He's just,
excellent actor.
every
Yeah.
take is something great with him. He's just so good.
he's so smart, and the deeper you get into the film, the big scenes he has coming up later, he's just so good. And again, so creepy. I mean, one of the challenges we had with this film, both Ari had in the writing, and we all had in the production and the cutting of it, is, you've got a film, and I know we're speaking to people who've seen the film, so everybody knows now what the twist or shock ending or whatever it is you want to call it, but you have very few people in the movie, and it's a hard ask to keep people, away from thinking it's De Niro for an hour and 10 minutes or whatever it is before it's okay to let them know. So we worked really, really hard to try and make Mr. Haskins, the sheriff, the neighbor, the guy in the fishing store, anybody we could, look like it could be a possible Charlie, so that people didn't have time to start thinking about maybe it's the dad. That impacted the writing and the casting and the way we cut it and what scenes we left in and what scenes we cut out.
Spaghetti and meatballs is your favorite dish. You're not hungry?
I love this scene. This is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. It's just an example of De Niro doing something that's so humane and so it's something you see you've done yourself, but to see him use it in this way and she shuts him down.
It's great.
It's
It's a
fantastic.
good scene to bring up because if you remember when we felt the first half of the film was potentially a little slow, which is partly the nature of the story. They get to the country. There's really, you've got to be so careful, and this is my kind of weakness, is, you watch the film so many times in post-production, I personally am so anxious not to make people bored or anything, and it was one of those things we considered right at the end taking out, and you said, Jeff, don't cut it for all those reasons. Yeah, it's so cuttable, it doesn't advance the story, but it's such a humane moment, and it's one of the first casualties when you're trying to drive the plot, but no one wants to see a film, I don't think, that's just plot.
No,
gotta
story is
have this
character
guy.
too, and I think that gives you such enormous access to what he's trying to do in a visual way. Again, a lot of this movie is brilliantly told visually, and I think that's why it's successful, because when you do something visual like that, the audience gets to impress their own feelings on it in a way that is more complex and more interesting than anything you could do if you reduce it to dialogue at a certain point. Like that moment is very complex, and it is because it's just faces and a moment between the two of them.
It's almost like the dialogue is not defining the moment. It's like you say, it's allowing you to project your moment onto the. Speaking of the visuals of this film, our DP, of course, is Darius Wolski, who's an incredibly talented man, and I think, honestly, I mean, the look of the film, looking at it now, he just did such an incredible job with this film. For me, at least, it's such a beautiful film to look
dailies
at.
were thrilling. I mean, he's a god. He has a gift. Sometimes he can be so subtle with what he does. Sometimes he can be so dramatic. He just has an enormous range. It was a pleasure to watch his work.
And working with him, I mean, just briefly, the way we worked together was, he read the script, he loved it as soon as he read it. He actually responded to it partly because of the relationship between the father and the daughter. He really responded to that. And, after a long day of sort of pre-production, Derek and I would every night get together at about 7:30 or 8 o'clock, have a glass of wine and just read the script to each other and stop like almost every paragraph and just talk about what was in my head, what was in his head. And I think I hadn't really done that before. I hadn't afforded that luxury, but it's what you said, Jeff, because we got pushed, as we were so close to the shoot. We're about a week out from the shoot when we got pushed a couple of months, and that, at the time was very painful, but it ended up giving us the opportunity to do things like that.
It was great.
And we literally would sit there and pitch it to each other and talk about it, and where's the light going to be, and what's the feel of the scene, and where's the camera going to be, and what are we trying to do. And we sort of slowly over those nights of 2 or 3 months came to the same page about, by the time we started, we pretty much talked out every moment in the film. So that was kind of a luxury.
And you did that with me too. So you were doing that with a lot of people,
Well, for me, it's like
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
You almost gotta overthink it. You've got to know every second inside out by the time you come to make it.
From all the different point of views and the different people coming from, writing, shooting.
Yeah, you sort of do. You go through it with the people, costume designers and the prop people and the script supervisor, and hopefully by the time you start, you've sort of looked at it from all angles and there's not many surprises left. The good old butterfly sequence
There it is.
was a lot of fun. That was CGI butterfly, of course.
Right.
We couldn't wrangle that particular butterfly.
We had one on a stick, but it didn't work.
It didn't work
Wasn't
as
there
well.
a question if there was butterflies in the winter?
There was, yeah.
It was like, what kind of butterfly,
Yeah, that consumed about 6 weeks of
Yeah.
post-production.
About 6 weeks.
If I
A flurry
remember.
of
And then, of course,
emails.
people see the film now, they got no idea, don't care what the season is, but we still managed to talk about for 6 weeks
Right.
if there really were
Butterfly.
butterflies in winter, and if so, what kind were they? And I think then we pushed the movie, right? So then it became
I don't
like
think it was
spring, and that
because of the
6 weeks was
butterfly,
just...
or was
No, I don't think it
No,
was,
wasn't
because of the
butterfly.
butterfly.
Emily! Oh, there you are. Come on, sweetheart, we're going into town. We have some errands to do.
So this is an interesting part of the film because this was always our kind of danger area when we started screening the film. It's when they've arrived at the house. So that's happened, and that's kind of cool, and the mum's died, and they've, you've got this kind of great pushed, in story. But now they're here, and really until we meet, and I'd say meet, like at least meet in dialogue, Charlie, which is coming up in a couple of scenes' time when Dakota's in bed, it's in danger, really, just the nature of it, of like treading water a little bit, I mean, we're meeting a neighbour, that's cool, and in a minute we're meeting Elizabeth Shue and all the rest of it. But I'm happy to say, I think, Jeff, in the end, we got to the point where, I wouldn't say it's fast, but at the same time, it's not too slow. It's kind of, it just cruises here.
Well, yeah, I mean, at a certain point, we felt we've got to take the time to set the stage for these things. And, like, I mean, for instance, this scene, Melissa Leo's terrific in this scene. She's just really great in the movie. And I remember when we saw Daly's the first day on this, you had her put this scar on her neck.
Yeah.
And it's just barely visible. It's almost impossible to see. But if you do catch it, it creates this incredible tension. And I think that's kind of what's going on in this part of the movie, is there's all these little details, all these little things that you need to sort of, you see them and you get them and you download them into your brain, but you don't know what to do with them yet, but they create enormous tension. And
They
I
just
think
make her a little weird. It's so funny you mention that because, Melissa and I met and we offered her the job, and then we sort of parted company for a couple of weeks as I went off to shoot or whatever. And we came back together, and it's so bizarre. She's like, I've got to talk to you about something. And I'm like, I've got to talk to you about something too. And she says, I feel like this character has got to have a something. Like just a something weird. And she said, what I think it should be is one of those, is it called a caliper?
like a brace on her
A
leg.
leg thing. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. So we looked into that, and it was too expensive. It was just, because even on a big movie, there are budget concerns. So like, wow, what can we do? So we talked to the makeup artist, and we came up with this scar, which was not
It's a
expensive
great
at all.
thing,
It was
great
free.
detail.
John Cagliano was our makeup artist and did a sensational job. We put this thing on her every day, and it's very, very subtle. And I'm sure, some of the audience watch the film and maybe don't see it or don't think about it. But you're right, it's enough to just make you go, where'd that come from? And what's going on at home with her?
You know, you don't realize, but I mean, this scene, there was always swings involved in a jungle gym. But first it was set outside of a school.
Right.
I mean, they were dressed where this location had changed so many times.
Yeah.
And then I guess out of, just realizing the area with the gas station there or whatever, you just keep changing just that.
The other thing that changed here, which is really interesting, is I'll never forget, in the first draft and subsequent drafts, there was no Dakota in this scene. You remember?
Yeah.
Bob's character goes out
right.
and says, come on, honey, we're going to the shops. And she says, oh, I want to stay here. And he lets her stay and goes out. And I remember you and I met with Niro, and we're having a script meeting, and he's like, guys, I got to tell you, I'm a parent. It's not going to happen. And here's you and me, like, we don't have kids and whatever. We're like, what do you mean? He's like, there's no way in the world any parent is going to leave this kid alone in the house.
Right.
And at the time, it sort of mystified me. But we did change it, and now that we've done it, honestly, I can't imagine that scene.
If he leaves his daughter there, you immediately like, this guy's, something's not right.
Yeah.
You
and
know,
it's obvious now, but I guess you and I had lived with it for so long, it didn't feel like a big deal.
I like the scene because he left, and then he comes back. And when he comes back, the scene was that, something's going on there. Something's wrong with her. She's holding her hands behind her back. All of a sudden, out from her hands comes these cut fingers and stuff. And he's like, oh my God. And he tries to, wash them. And I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have left you. Well, I think that's scary. And it shows that she's going into this dark place. It does also show that, well, yeah, you know what? You shouldn't have left her. We need to be really careful with these characters, especially at this early stages,
It was before that.
Before that, huh? Is he here right now?
I think he's sleeping.
Okay. Well, in that case, we better not wake him.
It's not unusual for a traumatized child to create imaginary...
Now, this is a critical moment because for me, this is what, in traditional terms, you'd probably call the first turning point, or, if you want to get into that jargon, but it's basically the moment where we meet Charlie for the first time.
Right.
And it was always something in all the screenings we did, I was very conscious of. It was always about because I felt if we could get people to that, hump, through some of that stuff that didn't feel as fast, just to where she mentions Charlie, then I felt like we had a chance at hanging on to their attention. So Jeff and I worked really hard up until that point to make it feel like there wasn't much fat, and that we kept changing the order of those scenes, and
we moved things around quite a bit, but
to try and figure it out.
Well, yeah, and in the end, I think it actually lands about exactly where you want it, and they're Bob and Dakota in that scene are just like at the peak of their powers for that moment. They're just so good. That's one of my favorite scenes too.
That was my favorite scene to write.
It's a great scene.
It was my favorite because it showed like, for the first time, she's happy. And why is she happy? And
it's
she's
creepy
being
that
secretive.
she's happy, which is really
She's
smart.
not telling him what it is exactly.
And he doesn't know what to do with that, which is really cool.
First he thinks, oh, it's a doll, it's another doll. Then he thinks, wait a second, is this a real person? Is there somebody that she met today or something,
It's very cool.
Is it him? Is it the sheriff? Then it comes back to, oh, it's imaginary, I see.
I just want to mention Brendan Sexton there, who you saw briefly. And the reason I mention him is he's such a talented actor, and he had a huge scene in this, which was exciting, I think, for all of us. He was working with De Niro, which was so cool because he's a young actor. And unfortunately, through no fault of his own, again, for all these reasons we're talking about, just making sure the film drives in this first critical half, we felt like that scene kind of had to go, and we just had to get on with the fishing and the sheriff and stuff. But it's a real pity. Is that in the deleted scenes, actually?
I think. Well, we put it in, yeah.
Yeah,
so
good.
Well, you see the full version.
You
there.
guys should check out Brendan in that scene.
He's great. Yeah,
he's
it's
really
a cool
really
scene.
good. Very funny and dry.
Speaking of cuts, this area here, this was a lot of cuts, like going around, trying to push the fishing here.
Yeah.
I mean, we had scenes with caves and doing this larger thing of what's inside the cave, and
they saw the cave right before this actually in an earlier version, which was interesting to
that was the scripted version.
Yeah.
On the way
we
to
shot
fishing,
it too. We had it.
We shot it and we had it in cuts. I'm like a nervous Nelly or in any movie at this point, because I feel like you haven't earned anything yet. You know,
Yeah.
people have just sit down, they got their popcorn or whatever, and they owe you nothing except maybe $10.
Isn't it true that was not a live beetle? Because you cannot kill.
No, it was a live
beetle.
beetle, but they put an appliance on the beetle's underbelly, and the hook went into the appliance. It went into this. The beetle had like this extra endoskeleton, and the hook went into it. And originally the blood was red, and no beetle has red blood. Everyone knows that. So we had to digitally change the blood to white
Now,
blood.
you see,
Here's
who
the
would
beauty
ever
of it.
know that?
Now, Jeff, I need to
You
know.
think they're killing the beetle? Of
Who
course.
was the
Who
vendor on
cares?
that?
You
Because
can't kill a
they
beetle.
did, who was our vendor on that?
That was
remember?
Digital Filmworks in
Digital
Burbank.
Filmworks. We need to thank them, because not only did they change the color of the blood,
They
as a
added
little
some-
added
yeah.
bonus, if you want to rewind, have a look at those legs.
They're
Because they
quivering.
literally twitched like crazy, and that was nothing to do with what happened with any real
Right.
beetle.
Yeah, it's animated legs.
But the beetle thing was amazing. In New York State, there are very, very strict rules
You
about what
can't
you can
kill a
do.
beetle.
with
Not kill a
animals.
beetle. You
And
can step on
frankly-
one by
do it.
accident, but by
Frankly,
in
I'm
the,
an animal lover. I'm all into that.
Oh, yeah.
Beetles, like, you do start to wonder, you know, how many beetles did you stand on the way down here to
And
talk
was
to
it
me
to-
about this one
Was
beetle?
it John, Paul,
And
George,
you
or
want
Ringo?
this beetle? Should we put the beetle in its trailer? I mean, it's like, and like we had a fishing scene, remember? And you couldn't have the fish
Couldn't
out
kill
of
the
water
fish.
for more than 10 seconds, and no fish was allowed to do more than one take. I wish they looked after directors like that, but no.
Here's your first dream. This is
Yeah.
really cool. I love
Talk
it.
to us about this, Jeff, because this stuff, you know, you really created these sequences. They were in the script, but you
No,
know,
it's great. I mean, the way he did this, you know, and
what was
it
the
cuts-
idea behind? I mean,
Well, we talked about this a lot. I mean, the idea was that, and you've seen the film, so you know at the end he's got another thing going on in his life, and the idea was his subconscious is sort of percolating through his conscious mind, and he sees it in his dreams. So we're starting to see the first parts of Charlie poking through, and it had to be sort of violent and upsetting, and really kind of images colliding with each other, because it's not a happy thing that's happening. It's sort of poking through his conscious mind.
so when you're sitting in the cutting room alone, looking at the material for that, and because it's really interesting cutting. Some shots are a couple of frames long. Others, you know, maybe you slowed stuff down. I know you did some stuff with some superimposition of a face.
Yeah, we
and
did a
stuff.
lot of different versions of it, but I think
Are you just kind of riffing when you do that, or?
Well, no, I mean, the idea, originally the dreams were more narrative. They were more sort of the beginning of telling the revelation, telling the story of what happened that we didn't see. And we found it was better to make them more abstract and more just a taste, just images, because if we told too much, you started to track them narratively, and it was more important to keep them as character beats instead of narrative beats.
Emily, why would you do this?
I didn't do it.
What do you mean you didn't do it? There's nobody here but us.
It wasn't me.
This scene here, you know, it went through a lot of, you know, different drafts too, in my head, you know, writing it. Was, do you have the words on the wall or do you not? You know, what's the message here? And, you know, how far do you want to go the first time we're in the bathroom? You know, what will she do? Will we see the candles? Will that remind us of you know, the mother's death? This is supposed to be a creepy moment of like, oh my God, she's doing the mother's death again. That's what she's doing, you know, and it's just a question of, you know, how far did you want to go there?
Use him, David. Use him to get through to her. He's the key.
And to back that up from a production design point of view, Stephen Jordan was our designer. I mean, just so people know, we built the entire inside of the house. So everything you see within the house in the country is a stage in Queens.
That's a stage. This is on location.
That's us.
That's a
in
stage.
That's Queens, yeah. And that's 6 weeks apart or
Yeah.
whatever too.
That's a stage.
But Steve Jordan built a bathroom in the stage in Queens that was an exact kind of mirror of the bathroom that he built for New York. So like, you know, I thought it was a little on the nose to build it exactly the same. We always talked about having a much more modern, cold, stainless steel look in New York and a much warmer country look in the house. But I thought it would be a little kind of on the nose to have. So what we did was we flipped it. So the door's in the same place, but the opposite, and the bathroom's in the same place, but the opposite. And then like the shower curtain is similar but different. Obviously the one in New York is like a glass sliding thing. That one is more of an old-fashioned like curtain.
She passed away.
So yeah, this is a stage, and I think he did an incredible job. Beth Kushnick as well, who was our set decorator. I mean, this place, these guys had some time, fortunately, to really work on every detail and make sure that, I mean, I think it's such a beautiful house to look at. And that's part of what unsettles me in the movie is, it would have been too easy to say, oh, look, it's a horror movie, let's make it a cold, scary house. But that's crazy for all the reasons we talked about, which is why would he bring his traumatized daughter to an unfriendly environment?
To a haunted house.
He's got to bring her to a nice place, and in a weird way, that's what makes it scary. Is
it turns dark? Yeah,
it turns dark, and it's not what you expect. And I think whenever you can give people something they don't expect, it just naturally makes it more frightening.
No, your instincts are great on that because it's like, again, it's that fairy tale sort of idealized world that he's trying to create. And that's the perfection of that against the horror of what's going on is what, anytime something familiar is perverted, it's scary. And that's why making this so warm and comfortable was a great call, because if it had been spooky and quirky, then everything's on the same line.
Also along these lines, me and John and I, we're from the city, New York, and you actually spend some time in the country, a week, to see what these houses are like, and to see, lived in some inn or something.
I went to Vermont in our push again. That push was the greatest thing that happened to this film. I decided to take a week completely by myself, went to Vermont, and I stayed in, what do you call it, an inn or
like a bed and breakfast?
Bed and breakfast,
alone.
right? And actually, one of the ideas that came out of that was beautiful bread and breakfast. It was nice and lovely people. But I noticed on the walls the strangest thing: these old weapons, like these kind of medieval weapons and whatever, and swords and hacks and like kind of vicious in amongst this beautiful furniture and books and this thing. And I'm like, so I get back and I say to Steve Jordan, I'm like, dude, and I took photos of everything. Whenever anyone wasn't looking, I would take photos of these weird. When I showed Beth and Steve,
they must have thought you were crazy.
I show up a couple of days later.
Who's this guy?
Look at this stuff hanging on the wall. See the top left?
Yeah, that's true.
Like weird corkscrewy things and things that look like they could really hurt people. And it just gave it this tone of, and of course everyone who knows it's a thriller is, if they're watching, is half expecting someone to grab that in the climax.
Well, he's putting a knife away. We all have a knife in our house, but now it's something familiar that's twisted, and it's scary.
Yeah. So that was, you must find that too, Ari. Like some of this stuff. I mean, I know you made the story up, but some of it must come from. Does any of it come from stuff that's
the way
happened?
look, everybody's different, and I've heard a lot of other writers how they write, and sometimes you take classes and people say, by page 10 you have to do this, by page 15 you have to do this, and I always stepped away from that because I write from not reality. I write from this fantasy type of world. I could not write about my own life. I could not write of the things that I know or things that I've experienced. It's more emotions, meaning like, what was I scared of? What am I scared of? I'm scared of kids, creepy kids. That's one thing. And the other thing is the woods, because I'm from the city. So you put those two together, and then you have the emotion of fear. And then with that, you go with it. And so, it's not so much like a story that, a real life experience. I don't think that's what I would be able to do. It's more emotions that I play on,
You're very lucky to have such a beautiful daughter.
This is one of my favorite scenes. And I got to mention Robert John Burke, who plays Steve in The Neighbor and is so good in this film and such a talented actor.
He's great.
And he's got 3 or 4 scenes, but he does them so beautifully and subtly. And actually, Jeff, to your credit, that scene, for people who don't know, the editor will do an assembly through the thing, and then you'll spend the next 10 or 12 weeks really honing that and nutting and talking about it, trying to. That's probably. That scene didn't change one frame.
Didn't change much since the first cut, but
since before we ended shooting.
I think we showed it. I think we showed it to the crew at the wrap party too, and it was, and they loved it. It was good. So.
And I don't think it's any different to what we showed at the wrap party.
That's pretty similar.
Yeah, it was. I just always loved that scene from the minute I saw the cut of it, and I was like, wow, that's just.
This was your thing.
Oh. The
teapot. I love the teapot.
He wanted that in there. There was, and it plays great. It does. And you get it. It's one of those things that you look back and get it.
Well,
you were very passionate about that teapot.
You should talk about The Office here, because this is a good example of what
The Office was one of the things we, through the entire process of writing and production and cutting, it was the concept that this guy is 2 people. He's 2 personalities. Now, when Bob De Niro and I did our research, we found that what actually happened, because, this is an actual disease, I suppose you call it, that people have. This is not make-believe, although we've sort of obviously fictionalized it here. But what actually happens is the host personality, as it's known, will black out while one of the other personalities takes over. And, if you talk to someone with this dissociative identity disorder, as it's called, it used to be called multiple personality, you'll find people say, I was blacked out, and someone else. Obviously, that's not very cinematic. You can't cut to black. So, Ari's concept and what we really tried to hone in the screenplay was the idea that, okay, he doesn't go to black. Okay, let's lie about that. He goes to his office. And so, we made a real point of showing him setting up the office in the scene earlier. And then he's always in the office whenever Charlie is doing something, so that obviously when you come back at the end and he realizes he's never even been in his office, he's never unpacked it, then hopefully the audience get, and I'm starting to find just recently at screen, people get that, which is such a relief, frankly, because we worked so hard on that.
Yeah, I mean, in the writing of it, the neighbors were imaginary. It used to be that way. And while he was dealing with these imaginary neighbors, that's actually when he was being Charlie and doing the creepy things. So he was imagining this whole thing.
Yeah.
So the problem was to switch it, because we switched from the neighbors to be imaginary to be real. The problem would be then, like, okay, well then, when's he Charlie?
Yeah.
And that's when we said, okay, you know what? The office. That whenever he's working in the office,
it was kind of a
that's
simple
the
device.
Charlie time. Yeah.
And we worked really hard. Remember, Jeff, how can you forget?
You can't have just like blackout times, and
But it works really well too, because I think it in the thematic sense, in an overall sort of arching sense, Bob's playing this character who's sort of a repressed guy, and he can't deal with his daughter emotionally. He deals with her intellectually. He's trying to cure her. He's trying to analyze her. He's trying to solve the problem. And so it's a perfect idea visually to put him in this intellectual place where there's books and he's writing and he's solving the problem intellectually. Meanwhile, he's off being this crazy person who's solving it emotionally. The idea is totally, again, it's again from character comes these sort of visual ideas, and that's why I think this movie works really well, exploding visual ideas from character and from story.
It's really easy to get caught in that vortex of like intellectual ideas or written ideas, things that are, I mean, you've got to constantly, when you whether you're writing, directing, or editing, whatever, you've got to always be thinking, how can I make this a picture? Forget about what's said, because for my money, what's said always takes second place to what people see. I mean, someone said to me years ago, you should be able to watch a movie on mute and still understand and enjoy the story. And I think there's some truth to that, I mean, obviously dialogue is of utmost importance, but it's always got to be supportive of, for me at least, of a visual concept.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say, hey, that's good dialogue. Dialogue, whatever, yes, it's important, and you'll remember some of the good lines, of your favorite movies, But it's really like, it's the scene itself, and it changes so much, the dialogue. And, through the editing room, too, you don't realize, when you're outside the movie, outside the business, how much gets chopped of the dialogue itself, of people talking to each other and how that can change, and it's the emotions that play in the scene.
Looking at this scene right now, it's probably as good a time as any, because it's I think one of the scariest sequences in the film, and largely a tribute to Dakota Fanning. We should talk for a second about how incredible this girl is. I mean,
she's amazing.
She is amazing. She was 9 years old on the day we shot this. She turned 10 as we were shooting the film.
She's 9 and she's going head to head with Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
And she's playing on his level in every scene. It's
I think they both actually, liked that.
It was really
worked
interesting.
Off each other,
Because you can imagine like how potentially intimidating it would be for a 9-year-old girl, and but it was great. You were there, Ari, the first day we read the script together, and I was as nervous as anything, because I knew they both, obviously De Niro's De Niro, Dakota I knew was an incredibly talented, but one thing that you cannot, it's not about talent, it's kind of about luck, is the chemistry that happens between two actors. And it's like up in the air until you sit down and read it. And obviously with two people at the level that they are, you're not really in a position to audition. I wasn't in a position to audition Dakota. And frankly, it would have been disrespectful because she had a lot of work that I could look at on tape and stuff. So the first time we ever saw them play scenes together was at the first read-through. And there was a great, sigh of relief from me, at least 5 or 10 minutes in, where I realized these two, I mean, I think you felt even Bob sitting up and going, wow, this is not just a 9-year-old girl I'm working with. This is someone who's A, incredibly experienced, and B, incredibly talented.
Well, they both have this incredible gift for emotional truth. It's like she'll know when she's being truthful, and Bob will know when he's being truthful, and together they're, when that clicks, it's really great, because they both have that ear. They have that ear, and they know when it's right.
Yeah,
and that's a gift.
Having worked with a few kids before, one of the first casualties of working with children is subtlety. And what was great about her was she had subtlety down to a fine art. I mean, she knew that in front of the camera, unlike, say, being on stage or maybe other formats, in front of a camera, it's kind of about thinking the moment rather than trying to act it out or pull a face or, do some kind of physical body language thing. She was able to sort of make the gear changes all within her own head and have it completely, read by the camera. And
before I was done writing the first draft, before this thing sold, before
you were always
before
like,
anything,
I
was like,
Dakota.
oh my God,
Yeah.
Dakota.
And wasn't
I
she
thought
a
it was,
family friend or something?
She is a family friend, yeah. And I wanted it, but I also thought, this is just not very likely, because she is, the most sought after.
I think, I don't want to speak for her or her parents, but I think, they really wanted to work with Bob, and that obviously helped us. And I think, too, to your credit, Ari, this is, usually the kid in a movie is like literally the kid to the lead role or the kid something, even in, other movies, like she's been so incredible, but this film, she carries the movie with Bob. It's a two-hander, and I think that was a great attraction for them.
I knew she would.
Yeah,
I knew she could.
She'd done a lot of movies already. It's hard to say, like a 9-year-old, hey, you want to cast a 9-year-old, but is she overexposed? So one of the things we worked on was her look, and obviously we changed her hair color, and I think something about that just totally worked. And we worked on it week after week after week to try and get the right, because this is a wig.
Right.
We couldn't mess with her hair because, she's young and we didn't want to sort of take the risk of making any damage. So we got a great wig made and we got the color right, and it did something to her blue eyes that made them just go nuts. And I think that's part of her appeal.
Yeah, that was a great call, because I remember seeing the original makeup test with you, and I was like, wow, I hate when wigs are always so tough, because sometimes you have to even cut around them if they're not, if they don't look right in certain scenes. And there's a lot of active stuff in this film, and when we started shooting it was such a great idea. It just changed her persona and her demeanor.
This is her scene. This is the one moment she has where she has to be stronger than everybody else. This is the moment, Emily's moment right here.
She's totally
at the dinner
She's so
table,
good.
right, when
She's
she's taking
become
over, and
totally
you're
in
like, oh my
control at
God,
this
this is the
point.
devil child. Right?
She's totally in control, and he has no chance of competing at this point. He's just going to have to do whatever she's going to tell him.
Just at this moment, I think this is the height of that.
Get started. You gonna say thanks?
When I first read the script, this was the scene this is about halfway through, where I thought, I really want to do this film, because there was something about this scene. It felt like it came at the right place, that everybody was saying the right thing. It was disturbing and scary and real and honest at the same time. And
I like how you smudged her lipstick a little bit.
Yeah, well, actually, I think if I remember rightly, at first we tried to put it on as if she'd done it herself, and it looked like we tried to put it on as if she'd done it herself. So I said, look, just wipe it off, give her the lipstick, give her a mirror, and chuck it on. And I think if I remember correctly, that's what we ended up with. That's Dakota's handiwork. And then, of course, we had to replicate it every time we did a new shot. There was a huge dialogue scene, if you remember, at the end of this. It was a good lesson, because it was one of those moments, hey, we've got an opportunity for everyone to explain themselves. And then...
Yeah, the interesting thing was,
trying to figure out...
why he becomes Charlie. And we went through so many different versions. There was one thing where we had this medical file coming out. you have that line in there now, which is like, hey, her childhood, I wanted to give her a better childhood
And it
than
felt
I
like
had.
the harder we worked to make it make
Again,
sense.
the more questions the audience would ask and would say, well, wait a second, why is he, and
And
it's
the thing, I tell you, the thing I kept coming back to was a film that I love is Fatal Attraction. Now, it's a popcorn movie, whatever, but I just love it. I think it works. And I've always thought about that film. It's so kind of great and bold and sort of unusual for one of these kind of films that they never try to explain why Glenn Close is who she is. There's
You just
one
get
moment
hints.
in
You get
that-
little hints.
Yeah, but like one hint. Like Michael Douglas has a scene where he fakes a heart attack, and then she gets upset, and then he laughs at her,
Right.
and then she says, "That's not funny because my dad died of a heart attack," right? And then he gets really upset, and then she says, "I'm only joking." But then when he breaks into her apartment, he finds an article that says her dad died of a heart attack. And it's just, that's it. It's like literally a drop in the ocean of backstory. And it's so cool because all these movies, they so desperately try and explain away the kind of neurosis or whatever. And maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like just be bold and say he's nuts. I mean,
It's always going to be a combination of factors that creates this situation, genetic and environmental. It's not going to always be just one thing. If they knew what it was, it would be something that could be treated. But I think the ambiguity is good because again, the audience will impress their own ideas about it, and that's always better than anything that you could tell them directly.
Charlie did it.
this particular disorder, in the research that we did, I mean, it always came back. It is true, like 99% of people with dissociative identity disorder do have some kind of a serious trauma as a kid, sexual usually, whatever it is, the most grotesque crimes I read about, all the rest of it. No one's saying he didn't have that, but do we need to go into it in the film? Do we need to do the classic Hollywood thing of let's spend 10 minutes now explaining?
I mean, that's just it. It's, a lot of people, they go into this deep thing. It's a movie. You know what? As long as you're on the ride and it's enjoyable and it's realistic in some sense. I mean, when I was playing with that idea, I was actually talking to a friend, Sarah, a psychiatrist, and it's like it's the human mind, and there is a creative license there. Maybe this wouldn't happen to 100 out of 101 people, but anything is possible. You just take that that creative license with a guy who's sick,
and hopefully, in my opinion, not break the rules,
No.
but not necessarily kind of adhere to them.
No, but the rules are, in this movie anyway, the rules that when he's Charlie, he's in the office. I mean,
That's
kind
it.
of
That's
stuff,
the rule.
like don't break that kind of stuff because then they'll say, well, wait a second, how could he be in two places at once? How could he? That to me are the rules. Make it convincing. Convince us that this guy can actually is insane and can do this.
Now, I want to spend a minute talking about De Niro because everybody takes for granted, he's Robert De Niro and Academy Awards and Taxi Driver and all the rest, and it's all true. But, let's give it a little insight into what it's actually like working with De Niro. And for me, this is my third film. It was obviously kind of a daunting prospect, meeting with him and all that. But I couldn't have met a more supportive man. He's very director-driven. He's all, once you've got the job, and obviously I had to meet with him and be sort of approved by him before, but he is all about you. It's almost like your opinion matters more than him, and I want to make sure you've got everything you need and all the rest. And I couldn't speak more highly of him. But so probably more interesting than that is his process, at least on this film. And I don't know with Bob whether he's the same on different films, but Jeff, nobody can speak with more sort of authority than you about how Bob works. So why don't you tell us about it?
Well, it's really interesting. One of the fascinating things about working on this film for me was I grew up on Scorsese movies, and he's one of my favorite directors, and certainly he did a lot of films with De Niro. And it's interesting to see how Scorsese's style of editing was sourced from De Niro's style of performance, because Bob acts like The best analogy I can make is a jazz musician. Bob will talk and say the line sometimes 3 or 4 times until he hears it right in his head, and then he'll sort of just follow that line. And it's kind of amazing watching him in dailies. He'll stop and restart and stop and restart.
Good, I want to see him.
He always gives you the piece that you need, but it's done in a way that he's looking for that moment of truth. He's looking for it in tiny capsules, and it's never done fully, beginning to the end of a take. Sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not. It's done in these little capsules, and I think it's fascinating watching him work because he does find it. He has to hear it and find it, and then he presents it, and it's always the piece that you need. You just don't know you need it until you're searching for it, and we did a lot of searching. He's brilliant at finding that moment. He's brilliant at hearing it in his own performance.
Here's what I love about him and what I respect about him is in my career, which has not been huge, but it's been around, but I've never met a guy who's probably got more right to be less experimental and yet is more experimental than any actor I've ever worked with.
He's fearless,
He gives you everything there is to give. I mean, he literally, in one scene, he will give you the entire rainbow of emotions and lines and try things and improvise lines and go back to the script and whatever and happy, sad. And then it's kind of like he delivers it on a platter, and it's really up to you and your editor to figure out how to make it work. And it's by no means like offloading the responsibility. It's like he understands movie making so well.
He's a true film actor. He
he's
understands
directed
that.
movies, and he's acted in so many movies that he knows that your job. The cliche is true that a film isn't made in the shooting, it's really made in the post-production, and he understands that better than anyone I've ever met. So he will give you everything there is to give in terms of ingredients, and then he kind of says, in not so many words, good luck. I gave you everything you needed. Go and make it happen. And frankly, it takes so much trust to do that, and it really does. There's no other way to put it, and it means that our job is much harder, but I think much more interesting at the same time. Starting with Jeff, and then when I came into the cutting room too, we looked through sometimes literally 35 lines because there might have been 7 takes of a scene, and yet in each take, Bob's done it like 5 times, whatever, because he, like Jeff said, he'll get to the end and he'll start again, or sometimes he's halfway through a scene and he'll start again. But what's clever about Bob is he'll only do it when he understands the process so well. He'd never do it with a tracking shot or a master shot or anything where
when he's in separation, he knows he can give you a piece.
He does it with his close-ups or with shots that he knows you can loop.
You can tell me.
My sense, I didn't have much to deal with him on the film much at all because I was cutting him a lot of the time. But I know he was very fond of you, and the way I know this is because when we screened the film for him the first time, he seemed in a terrible mood when he walked into the screening room.
I wasn't there, right?
You weren't there.
Yeah, no.
You weren't there, and I screened it for him, and he walked in the screening room.
Let me just say, I purposely stayed away because I didn't want the lights to come up and be standing behind Bob going, hey, what'd you think? So I said to him, listen, go down there. It's on Sunday, 8 o'clock. Just call me when it's finished. And what happened, Jeff?
Well, he showed up, and he seemed in a terrible mood. He wanted a number of espressos, which we provided for him graciously, and when the film was over, he came out with a huge smile on his face, and I knew he had loved the movie. I was just absolutely certain, and he came up to me and he said, are you going to talk to John? And I said, yeah, I was going to call him and let him know that you were finished watching the film. And he's like, okay, here's what I want you to do. Tell him I hated it. I want to let him stew. I want to let him, sweat on this, so I'm going to call him in like 2 hours. But call him right now and tell him I hated it, I was in a bad mood, I walked away angry. I always feel like the director's the most important person I answer to on a movie, but Robert De Niro trumps the director.
Oh, he does. And I don't take that personally.
There's no way I'm gonna not do this. So I called John. I'm like, John, I don't know. I think he had some problems. He seemed a little concerned. I don't know what to do.
And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean concerned?
John was freaking out. So then, of course, I go back to the cutting room and I'm working on some stuff, and 4 or 5 hours go by, and I know John is just freaking out. And he calls me, he's like, what's going on? Bob hasn't called me, I don't know what's happening, what happened? And I'm like, John, I don't know. And I'm still trying to pull this off. And about an hour after that, I got a call from John. He's like, I can't believe you guys did this to me. And I was so relieved that Bob had actually remembered to call him and let him off the hook, because I'm afraid John's on a flight to Australia.
Exactly. I was so nervous, I thought my career was over that day. But the funny thing for me was when I finally did connect with him, and he said, "Hey, I love the movie." He said, "I had no idea I was Charlie." And I thought, "Well, that's cool. If you didn't get the twist, that's probably a good sign."
Yeah, when I first heard he was in the movie, I was just like beside
Yeah, how was
myself.
that?
I mean,
Because
yeah,
originally, let's talk about that, because originally the character was younger. When I first read the script, I mean, I think you said early 30s, late 30s, something.
you can't go out and write something and expect it to be, De Niro starring in it. You just did. You have people ask me, did you have De Niro in mind? I'm like, what? That's
What
not.
the hell are you
you,
talking- yeah,
no,
yeah.
you can't have that in mind. I mean, being this, is my first, produced film. It was, really, really, really exciting. It's almost beyond words, and you're just sitting in the situation. And, just the idea of it, it took me a while. I almost had to just not even focus on it and just kind of go away from it to deal with it because, or else I could be,
Particularly because,
taken up
I mean,
into
so
the
many,
stars with it.
in this business, so many things happen for a week and then they don't happen. And
Yeah.
you hear De Niro's
A
interested
lot
or Clint
of
Eastwood's doing
things
it,
like that.
and then it never happens or whatever the hell it is. So
So I
it
come
must have
to-
been nerve-wracking.
Oh, yeah. But when he was finally in it, it was just so exciting. And, I come to New York, and New York's my hometown, and I'm coming back there, have some friends there, you're there, and, we're getting ready, getting everything set, all the sets. And, finally the day had come where I was going to meet him for the first time. And I didn't want to seem over anxious, like, oh, my God, I'm such a big
I
fan.
remember that.
I
man.
did not. Cool.
Let's talk about that, because we went up to
I
Bob's
want to be
apartment.
cool. That was it. It was just like going in there, hello, that's it.
And were you cool?
I went, well,
Tell us how what happened.
we went.
Because if I remember rightly, you weren't that cool. But let's go ahead.
It was almost over cool that turned out to be not cool. It was walking into the kitchen. You were there, John, Barry, the producer, and Bob De Niro, and he was sitting there, and it was this small kind of intimate table, and in the center there was these sandwiches, all the different kinds of sandwiches.
Best sandwiches
I don't
you've
think
ever seen.
I don't think he made it. I don't know what happened, but anyway, they were there, and I of course.
Just so I can say, I don't think he made those sandwiches.
Yeah, I don't think he.
I just wanted to
I was
add
thinking,
that.
right? Was he like in the kitchen cooking? I don't know. But what I did want to do was definitely give this idea that hey, this is an everyday thing for me. It's fun, So I start to eat, and I'm eating, and I'm looking around, and no one else is eating, and I'm eating these sandwiches not to try to be bashful, And then he starts talking to me, and I'm realizing that my mouth is filled with all this food, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm trying to be so comfortable, like, oh yeah, you always hear the Italians, they like you to eat. And so we're sitting there, and and he's he's going over the script, and that is such a thrill, taking notes from him. For the first time, you have this guy giving you his thoughts, and that was
they were
such a
incredible
thrill.
thoughts too, like so instinctive.
Well, what he does is he comes through the, it's funny how different people give different notes. A studio will give notes on basically on structure. They're all across the board, but De Niro really comes from an actor, an emotional point of view, and he says, "Would my character do this? Would he say this? Would it?" So he's looking at it, from that way. I don't think he's ever given any structure notes or anything like that. So while he's doing this, and I still have sandwiches all over my mouth and crumbs over my shirt, and I'm taking notes in one hand, and you guys are just kind of acting cool in the corner. It's very simple. I'm sitting next to him. We're in a circular table. I cross my leg, just cross my leg. My foot grazes his pants, just grazes it, but he jumps up. He jumps up, and I'm like, oh my God, I just kicked him. I just kicked De Niro. And I'm like, I'm sorry. And he's like, it's okay.
And I'm looking at you like,
okay.
you want to stay on this movie or not?
I'm like,
what are you kicking De Niro for?
What am I doing? So I'm like, but the end and you were there, and you saw he did jump, and I think it shocked him, but it was such obviously an accident.
Think, frankly, I don't think he'd been kicked by a rider before. Let me talk about this for a second, because Melissa Leo's on the screen, and she's so incredible in this film, and this is her scene.
Many people in similar circumstances.
This is, where we have an opportunity to develop this kind of red herring, I suppose, of her husband.
Right.
As a possible. So talk to us about this, Ari. I mean, how did this scene come about?
This was one of actually my favorites. I think that, talking about like how sometimes it comes differently than you'd expect. I think that this is a version of something that she and you have done to excel my expectations as far as what was on the page. I think that, you know, we wanted to make a scene that we could sell the fact that the husband could be Charlie. And if you look at her, you know, just there, the way her tears, you know, tearing, you see there's something really painful in there. You know, and you sense that, okay, and this lock of the door, you know, we had talked about that. Like, okay, he doesn't trust them. Something's going on across the street.
What I realized early on is the more we make him, De Niro's character, David, feel like there's a threat outside the house, the less likely we are to point the finger at him. So the more we can make him look out the windows, lock the door, think about the neighbors, you know, you almost don't have time to go, is it Bob, you know?
Well, and
so that's why
you also want him to be proactive in doing something. So he's actually going across the street to the neighbors, and
we tried this movie without that scene, right, Jeff? And it felt like
we did.
I mean, frankly, it's a slightly passive character through. You know, it has to be because of the nature of the story. This is one of the sequences where David actually goes and does something, and when we cut it out, it really made it feel like, wow, the one thing he does is gone.
I always felt too that it had a thematic resonance, which is that the movie's about people who are scarred by trauma and how they deal with it. Emily deals with it by creating this imaginary friend in this imaginary scenario. David creates it by creating an imaginary personality named Charlie. And Melissa Leo deals with it in a much more sort of conscious way. She's terrified. She's shut down. She can't do it. And I think that scene always felt like it sort of reached this sort of central theme of the film.
Didn't you hear me calling?
So Elizabeth Shue, who you know, frankly, I've become friends with her since this, and she's just the greatest person, but she's also so good in this film.
I love this scene.
I love this scene.
Yeah.
She's great in this scene.
This scene.
She's reaching out to Dakota.
When people see this film,
sweet, you know.
This is the scene. You know, when people walk out of the theater, this is invariably the first scene. People, you know, Elizabeth going out the window, and it's so good. And the dialogue, Ari, credit to you, is just so creepy and perfect, and understated and right. And for whatever reason, Derek and I had this idea to shoot these profile. You know, we've got the traditional coverage here, which is fine. And I got to tell you, when you've got a limited schedule, as you frankly always do, even on a big film, whatever, I mean, no matter how big the budget or the schedule, it always feels like you're pressed for time and money. To try and get this shot and the next shot, it's like the icing on the cake, and you know you don't need it. But for whatever reason, we fought that day to just get it. You know what? Today, I don't want... I think I remember saying to everybody, I don't want just the coverage I need today. Today, I want the coverage that I actually want.
I remember seeing this in dailies, and I was like, oh, I know where to go into that. Yeah. And it's a fantastic composition. And Elizabeth's performance in the scene is fantastic too, because it's almost musical. It's like, again, it's the way Bob is like a jazz musician. She's also so musical in this scene. It's the way she's sort of, you know, she's playing this childhood game, and then it's just going dark, and you can hear it in her. You can hear it in her voice. It's
and this
terrific.
shot here, right here of Dakota, that I remember seeing that in dailies, and I go, oh my God, that's just so cool. It wasn't planned. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't, you know, anything I hoped to get.
Cartoons. This was, I mean, at one point that was a big part of the script. I mean, it was in every scene.
I think it was Tom and Jerry when you wrote the script, right?
There was a lot, right?
And that was ruled out by like the $7.8 million that they wanted or something. So then it was left to Jeff and I to go through every tape we'd been provided with. That was kind of a little bit more in our budget range, and we found this stuff that pops up 2 or 3 times in the film. That was kind of this period cartoon, and was such a great look and such great music and so kind of weird and creepy.
Well, the period element is great because what I said before is it really informs a sort of dreamlike element to the movie, which is there's no particular time or space. It's all sort of this subconscious dreamscape that you're living in. And the fact that the cartoons aren't modern, you don't see commercials, you don't see any relation to reality. We're seeing this movie through David's perspective, and he's just, you know, he's gone, and we're in his subconscious. So the fact that they're from another time is just really beautiful.
But originally, Ari, like, how did the cartoon thing come about?
You know, it comes back to this idea that, which is in there now, but the idea is that, look, her dad is not fun. She is lost her best friend, which was her mom. She's searching for a playmate. She's up in this lonely place. She has no one to play with. So, one, cartoons are violent, I always see. And so that could also
true, actually.
help
I mean,
her violent, behavior, or help when Charlie does something violent, she'll be like, hey, it's just like cartoons.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So you're kind of justifying that's how he teaches her through the cartoons. Also, because it is playful and it is, a fun kind of behavior, and it's something that Charlie would watch, but her dad would, turn it off and be like, So I think that getting that dynamic of her dad, not, as you said, Jeff, before, not being, emotionally involved with her, more intellectually, where Charlie is this emotional being. Basically, Charlie is everything that David wants to be, in essence,
Well, that's really interesting because Jeff and I always talked in the cutting room too about the great irony of this story is that the father, on the surface, wants nothing more than to solve his daughter's problem.
Right.
Meanwhile, he's being Charlie, and the great irony is that he actually is solving her problem in a weird way by being Charlie, by playing with her, by sort of, it's kind of a dark way to look at the story, but I think it's true. It's kind of a nice full circle that even though he dies in the end, in a weird way, and she's obviously traumatized at the end of the film, he's somehow done what he wanted to do, albeit in a completely different way than what he wanted to do it.
And with these, these split personalities, something that is, realistic here is that one will be dominant over the other. And what this really is the case of his altered personality becoming more and more dominant over the movie as he loses his grip. This movie is basically Charlie winning over David. And he takes him over at the very end.
He beats him. When he says Daddy's
with
gone,
Dakota's help.
That's it.
Because she doesn't really like her dad that much. So Charlie's using her, and she's using Charlie, because they're we're gonna play together forever and ever. And, you get that sense that she's helping this other guy take over her dad. But then once he finally gets there, wait a second, this guy's not what I thought he was,
Good girl. You can go on up to your room and play.
Let me talk about this scene for a second because this is one of my favorite scenes. Dylan Baker is so incredible in this scene, but also we shot this in a day. And the reason I mention it, it's probably the closest scene in the entire movie to a theatrical production. We rehearsed this. It's quite a long scene. It's probably 3 or 4 pages. And we rehearsed it quite a bit. And when we came to shoot it, even though it's 3 or 4 pages, usually you would break that down, but we shot this in one piece, and we got a master shot and then a tighter master and then close-ups. And I just think Dylan Baker is so incredible in that scene. This is like his showcase scene in this film, although he's great in all of them, but it's like the scene where he comes around. And remember, Ari, we tried to walk that very difficult line of this is the sheriff, but we also want you to kind of believe that maybe this is Charlie.
But not too much, because then we're cheating the audience. So everything is a delicate line,
So I'm such a cynic. I always felt like the neighbor, although we clearly tried to say the neighbor was Charlie, I'm sitting in the audience going, well, if you're trying to tell me the neighbor is Charlie, then I don't believe you, because it's a movie, and there's no way in the world that you're telling me the truth in a film like this. So for me, at least, the sheriff was always the one that I thought, well, for those cynics like me who are sitting out there in the audience, they're going to go, I know it's not the neighbor, I know it's the sheriff. And that way we still get to, kind of trump them when we say it's
Yeah, it's strange, because I was always thinking, my intentions were trying not to have people guess who it is. Don't even go there. Let them, because once you start guessing, you're going to get it. Especially with the reality of, casting and everything.
But how do you not guess if,
I
by
almost
this
want
point,
them
someone's
enjoying.
gone out the window. You got to be thinking about who pushed them out.
Right, but also enjoying the drama of what's going on and not trying to think so hard into
think
the red
outside the moment,
into the red
just-
herrings.
yeah.
Right, because if you go into a movie like this and you're like, I'm gonna get the ending, I'm gonna get the ending, I'm gonna get the, and you're not even enjoying what's happening, you will get it eventually, and but it's the misdirects, but it's also the enjoyment of what's happening, you know, his destruction here, you know.
I love this moment because it's Bob crying. It was just one of those sort of vulnerable moments that, again, I think helped sell the idea that it wasn't him,
Right.
but also showed us Robert De Niro doing something we haven't seen a lot of him do. I mean, how many times have you seen Robert De Niro cry in a movie? You know, we had that other scene earlier that ended up getting cut out. Actually, he was really good in too. But that one, I'm really glad that's in the film.
It is different for him to play this type of role, you know.
Well, the sort of concerned father.
The concerned father and vulnerable, you know, and, you know, she, at times in this movie, she has the strength, you know, and it's trying to deal with this crazy daughter, but then you realize, no, he's actually a maniac, you know. But
Dakota's so good in this scene too.
yeah.
And this is really informative of making a film because I remember shooting this scene and I was so under the hammer and so stressed and whatever, and I was thinking, how the hell is this ever going to work? And you've got hour problems and, you know, we've got to wrap and all that. And then you put it together and little Dakota is in front of the camera and she's like acting like you wouldn't believe, and you put it together and, you know, it works. This sequence probably shouldn't have worked, but somehow, Jeff, I mean, I remember you saying, this doesn't actually make any logical sense, but somehow it doesn't matter.
Yeah, this was a very difficult section of the film,
Yeah.
actually, because we're dealing with stuff that very soon you're going to be able to reference back to how was he able to be in this place and that place and so forth. And in a weird way, as long as you follow the emotional truth of what's going on, the audience is going to go with you.
Yeah, as long as within that moment,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, if you betray that, they're confused. But, you know, as we learn as we worked the film, as we edited it, if you stay true to the emotional tact that you've taken, the audience will go with you, and it worked. I was skeptical, and once we put it together,
Well, that
this
was
worked
also
real
the
well.
scene where he actually went out, like, you see the way it was done now, you see all of a sudden he's wearing this, like, jacket, you know, but what he was actually doing was going out to bury, you know, to dig the hole for Elizabeth, basically. But we're skipping that, but we go right to that, and, you know, you don't even know that, and you
I
miss
can't
it.
tell you how many of those, that raincoat he has there, the yellow thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I have photographic evidence of Bob trying on maybe 60, literally, I'm not kidding. The costume designers could have killed me. I mean, and Bob, frankly, because, you know, obviously he has specific kind of ideas about those things too. And what I was trying to find, and I want to talk about the yellow thing because it's actually quite interesting. I always thought that Charlie, you know, even though we don't go into the backstory, and I think that's the right thing to do, I did learn from all the doctors that these split personalities, whatever you want to call them, do always, without fail, without exception, do come from a childhood trauma. So I always felt that Charlie himself, which we're getting to in a minute, you know, was a child, you know, this other personality, because, you know, again, if you read the books, I mean, they're not confined to gender or age. You can have a 40-year-old man with dissociative identity disorder whose various identities are a 9-year-old girl, you know, a 21-year-old drag queen, a 76-year-old man, whatever the hell. So I always felt Charlie, even though we, you know, really I tried not to be explicit about it because I thought it was kind of on the nose. I thought he was a 9-year-old boy. And the reason I fell in love with this raincoat, or whatever you want to call it, and I think why Bob did too, was, to me, at least growing up in Australia, and I don't even know if it exists here, but that whole kind of 9-year-old, 10-year-old boy thing of going to school and having a yellow raincoat that could be seen in the rain and you wouldn't get run over and all that. It just felt like this kid thing. And as soon as he put it on, I fell in love with it. And I'd literally seen 60 of them. So what we did was, when he buries the cat, like probably half an hour ago in the movie, we introduced that coat so that it didn't just pop up out of nowhere. And then, obviously, because this is the beginning of the last night of the film, we had to find a way for him to put it on and keep it on as Charlie. So it just was very important to both Bob and I what he actually wore when he makes the transition to Charlie, which is this scene. I want you to talk about this, Jeff, because this is probably the most important sequence in the film.
Yeah, I'm sure that we spent more hours cutting this material than anything else in the film, and it's extremely delicate. I mean, if you go one frame, literally at times, in one direction or the other, it no longer works. And we found, it took us forever to find the structure of having the first barrage of flashbacks, then he goes to the other boxes as he's doing now, opens them, and then that sort of releases the deluge of the full disclosure of what happened at the party. And I think balancing this was extremely difficult. It was actually the most fun I had working on the film, putting this together, because we had so much material that we wanted to sort of reference back. And when we finally found the sweet spot of how much the audience could take at this point and how much totally informed them and spun the narrative in another direction, which was always what Ari's script did, which was, at this point, it just completely spun you around in another direction, sent you off on a totally different course, and made you reevaluate everything that you had seen. And I think if we had gone too far, you wouldn't have had that feeling, and if we had gone too short, you wouldn't have had that feeling. So I think it couldn't have been more delicate. You know, the pieces that we had to work with were great. There were just so many of them, and we ultimately ended up with this balance. This is always thrilling to me when I watch the film. I think it's really well shot, it's really well constructed, and I think there's two moments in the movie that just blow my mind. One's coming up a little bit later. This one is the first, and it's Bob's reaction when Dakota says this, and it's coming up here.
I mean, there's two things that are interesting to me about this. One is that you're absolutely right in everything you said, and what's interesting to me and fascinating is actually we came, I mean, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, we ended up coming back to the structure we started with.
Yeah, we
At least when I was in the cutting room, we changed it a lot, we tried it different ways, and we tested it, and we previewed it. But like a lot of things, we ended up going, you know what, we were right the first time. And what happens is, I think you have this gut instinct in the cutting room, like, let's do it this way, and you're right. And then you preview it, and you get other opinions, and everybody has an opinion, and you know, audiences or whatever, and you sort of change it, and then you go, you know what? We were right the first time.
Yeah,
Let's just go back. This is the way
during
it
your
should
director's
be.
cut, we put this together. I remember, and structurally, it was what we ended up with, and it was, you know, as Jack Kerouac says, first thought, best thought, and it was what we did, and it seemed.
The second thing I want to say about this is the way it was scripted. You know, when Ari and I
5
worked together-
pages of flashbacks.
Well, there's that.
There was a
There's
draft.
That's
that was
another
5 pages.
Yeah. I felt when I first read the script, I felt that it was a little bit like the making of Hide and Seek. It was like, you remember?
What do you mean?
Well, we were trying to explain everything.
Yeah, and it was like, you know
right.
what? Rather than think about it as explaining everything, why don't you break it down and go, if we don't explain it, you know, what do we need to explain?
Right.
You know what I mean? Rather than, let's explain everything. It's like,
Right.
let's figure out what we don't need to explain and go too far, and then go, oh, well, we went too far, so we've got to explain that. But no, what I was going to say was that De Niro's performance, where he becomes Charlie, and there's a great close-up of it, was never scripted. It was never planned. It was never whatever. But we did roll the camera, and he had this great moment, and I never even planned to use it. But by the time I got to the cutting room, Jeff had sort of put it in, and I'm like, how can you not use that? I mean, it's Bob De Niro.
It's amazing. It's just a moment
It's
where
this
he
kind
freezes.
of, it's in the cut. It's this kind of moment where
freezes.
he sort of freezes and he flickers his eyes and he looks at the light and he half smiles and he does all these weird
Oh, is that
things.
through the mirror?
No, before that.
She
Close
says
up,
daddy's,
low angle
before he
close
says
up.
daddy's gone now, it's really cool.
So this is Dylan doing the...
See, originally he was afraid of the dark. Nyctophobia.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's
We
talk
had
about
that-
it, all right, because that's kind of interesting.
Sure, we had. I mean, you know, we had this idea that the sheriff here was talking to the doctor because we wanted David, you know, as a psychiatrist to be helping someone or doing something as a psychiatrist, you know. And this guy was a weird sheriff in town, but he had this little quirk, which was like he was afraid of the dark. But the way he would ask about being afraid of the dark, it almost seemed like, you know, how's that girl doing up there? You know, it almost was like giving.
So we had a scene in the general store. right?
Yes, where he was explaining his problem and yep, and that's, and you know, you could take it out and you still have him scared because it's, you know, dark or, you know.
No, you're
it's
right.
a scary
we
situation
had,
anyway.
We had more of a backstory here, and what happened was, again, we found It's slowed down. I mean, it's like the age-old cliche, kill your babies. It felt like a great scene, and Dylan was so incredible in it. But from a story point of view, it's got to ground to a halt.
The invocation of the Marco Polo game is great too, because it's another childhood game. It's Charlie riffing on the hide and seek theme. I think the minute you hear Bob say Marco, you know what you're in for, and it's a matter of just waiting for it to happen.
John and I, when we were trying to come up with the ending, what would be like good things in the end, we were talking about, okay, let's have this guy be playing games. So
we got on websites.
we
Remember?
were looking at
what
games.
are childhood games? I didn't play them when I was 10.
We
Let alone
had
now.
the
I'm like,
scene,
what?
which we actually pitched to the studio, but we had this scene of him playing hopscotch. He's going to do like this hopscotch, like, and approaching Dakota as Charlie, like trying to scare her, and. It was almost like they're like,
We should
"Are you
have been
guys?"
fired. We should have been
I don't-
fired right there.
I'm gonna pretend that this is not happening.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go over this.
They were like, let's pretend we didn't have this
We
meeting.
didn't hear that one. Like, I think that one might be over. And you know what? You get excited because you get passionate in the moment of like what this guy can do, and you always push the envelope. You go there. But that sometimes you go too far.
Well,
it's a good thing we didn't shoot that.
John, I have to ask you about this because this is one of my. It's not one of mine. But it's my favorite scene in the movie. And I was just wondering when you were shooting this, because we never really actually talked about this as we were cutting it. But Bob and Dakota are in a place that's just unbelievable here.
Yeah, I agree.
They're just totally matched, and it's like a matching of wits. And I was wondering if you felt this when you were shooting it.
Well, no. I mean, usually, you're so under the gun with the time and the schedule and stuff. You're trying to get what you can. I find, at least maybe it's just me, I never feel like I got it until we get back and cut it and whatever. But I'll say two things about this. One is Derek and I, the DP, made a decision that once De Niro is Charlie, rather than let's do the in-the-face, on-the-nose Charlie, it just felt like it had been done before. What happens if, the less we see, the more scared we are? So we made a very conscious decision, and Derek really followed through on it, which is, let's not light his face. I mean, you can see that through every scene, the scene that's coming up on the stair. Let's put him in the dark. Let's figure out how scary he is. It's almost like the less you see, the more scared you are.
I mean, it's
And
the
I
old
think
rule.
that was
It's
kinda
true.
cool.
What scares you the most is what you don't see. It's what you're imagining, what you're thinking.
And Dakota, you're right, Jeff. That scene we just saw, Dakota is that's where I think she's the most brilliant she is in this entire film.
No,
She's
it's
so
great.
real and so there. And in Bob's favor too, it's like what I was saying before. With Bob, he will do the series thing. He'll go back and do the, but even that, which is a very slow track in, if you notice that, he would never dream of resetting himself in that scene.
He didn't.
because
Yeah, that
he
was one
knows
piece. Right.
You're tracking.
Did you say, hey, this is what I'm thinking for you and Charlie, or were you like,
Bob
do
and I
what
talked
you want?
endlessly about that.
Right.
We talked endlessly about who Charlie was, and he has kids, so he gets the whole childhood thing, and he actually went to some, when he went to pick up his kids, he would go half an hour early and see what they were doing in the playground and stuff like that. So he had a lot of ideas about, the games they play, the way they talk, the sort of sing-songy thing they do. I want to mention Famke here because she's so incredible, and we haven't sort of touched on her. This is where she sort of comes into the film as sort of here to stay. She's been sort of had her few scenes along the way, but she's so incredible. And here's what I love about Famke. She's so gorgeous that you think, okay, she's gorgeous, but, how smart does she come across? Can she play the child psychologist and all that? And what I loved about her when we met was I totally believed, and when I looked at all of her work, she's one of those very, very rare actresses who is not only drop dead gorgeous, but you totally believe how intelligent she is on screen, and that was exactly what we needed.
She's really committed too. It's amazing. In a lot of these scenes, she has to be Like at the end of her rope a lot of the time, and coming up you'll see, you know, she's really at a point where she's got a lot to deal with emotionally, in terms of action, in terms of everything, intention. And there's just this utter confidence in her performance. It's
so great. I mean, she's one of the few actresses that can come into the room with a gun in her hands and call out Emily and not make it feel like a cop show, you know, but make it feel real. Actually, I originally met with her to play the mother, to play Amy Irving's role. And she was like, well, I read the script and, you know, I was thinking, you know, how would I be as Catherine? And I've got to admit, initially I was like, well, I'm not so sure. And then we sort of did a couple of scenes and I was like, wow, this girl is so kind of gorgeous but talented at the same time and so smart on screen. And I mean, I just think she's really great.
Was the shower curtain thing always something you had intended to do? Was it something you and Derek had come up with?
Just totally on the spot. I mean, totally on the day.
What, him behind it?
Yeah.
That's so great.
What I try to do when I shoot a shot
I think it's my favorite shot of him. It's that creepy, creepy.
But it's completely just like luck of the draw, because what I try and do whenever I do a shot is try and, you know, just for coverage's sake, try and shoot what would happen before it and what would happen after it. So you have some options in the cutting room. So that shot was really meant to just be the close-up of him, you know. But of course you get back to dailies and you go, hey, that's pretty cool. Like looking through that shower curtain and the blood and the knife, it's pretty good. But I can't take credit for that. I mean, that just happened on the day.
This was also something we restructured in editing, and was your idea, John. It's a great idea, which is to intercut Famke smashing through the door with the door burst through.
And sound-wise, it's really cool,
It's fantastic because you're so invested in Famke trying to get out of that closet, and you're so invested with Emily trying to get out of the house, and the two things sort of just lay in perfectly. It's really cool.
Originally in the script, I mean, it's really interesting for people watching that originally De Niro / Dakota's storyline of going up and trying to get through the door happened before Catherine arrives, right? And then in the cutting room, Jeff and I are like, hey, what happens if we intercut these two ideas so it didn't feel like it was as, you know, it just felt like much more urgent and everything was happening at the same time. This is the kind of scene I mean with Famke. She has the ability to come into this room with the gun and just feels so real, and she's got the bruises, and it just, you know, I mean, honestly, there is a bad version of the scene where, you know, the actress comes in and it's like so kind of on the nose, and I think Famke just sells it. She totally sells it. So now we're at the cave, which, I mean, what can you say? It's Jeff. I mean,
we spent a lot of time in the cave.
A little bit, yeah.
But I mean, again, you know, this is where the movie comes full circle for me. You know, the first time I read the script, and I mean, I think this is something that comes through in a subconscious way. The dreamscape of the movie, the idea of, you know, the cave is such a perfect metaphor for this guy's subconscious. All three characters are going to end up in this subconscious world, this world of darkness, this world of sort of inability to see, and they're going to have to battle out their final moments in this place. And I think it's a brilliant screenwriting conceit to put this in this place, because all of the comfort of the house, all of the comfort of reality is gone. We're now in this total primal world, and anything's possible.
It's where they met.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I think it's cool that it
Charlie and Emily,
comes full circle. It was originally like, okay, she goes out into the woods, you know, the first day that she's there. We're trying to misdirect everyone, thinking that something's down this trail, you know, something maybe supernatural, who knows. You go down this trail, and what she discovers is this cave. We think he's back at the office, but really, he's in this cave as Charlie, and they meet that day in the cave. And that's why, you know, I feel like it's almost like this is their playground, you know? So it's good that it comes back into the cave.
It's true. I love the way Derek shot it. You know, it's hard. Shooting a cave, you know, you don't want the Hollywood version of a cave. You want the cave that's real. I mean,
I remember
if you've
the
ever
day-
been in a cave at night.
I remember the day we were sitting there. It was at lunch. I was outdoors in New York at some cafe in the village, and we're like, wait, this cave. What do we need with the cave? We're like, water. Put the water in the cave, and then it might even been Barry. That was like flashlights, like beams of light. It just kind of came together.
I was
like
so
that.
glad we got the water because it was a huge expanse.
You said it.
It just always felt like the moisture of that, the kind of sexiness of it almost, and the kind of emotional quality that.
The actors didn't like it, though, did they?
Well, no. I mean,
But they
none of us
probably,
liked
but
it.
they probably used it. That's the
Well,
thing.
yeah, it made it much harder to shoot, but it also made it much more real. Everybody was.
If this was
struggling.
just dirt,
I mean, this took
It
us
does
3
that.
days to shoot the
Right.
scene, and there's a reason for that. I mean, it takes you like an hour or 2 hours to move the camera. Everybody's got like the whole plastic thing going on the legs.
This is my favorite Dakota moment.
There you are.
This face, this close up of her,
Yeah,
it's
She's
just
so good here.
yeah, it's
she's so good here, and it's so
believable.
real.
It's just
And I do think there's something about, I'm not a method guy at all, but there's something about putting actors in the real scenario. You can't help but be traumatized or whatever it is. Something happens, something chemical happens that makes you just feel like you're in the moment.
This was also your idea, John, which is a great one, which is using the black, on and off with the flashlight. We had originally shot it slightly differently blocking-wise, and to intercut these sections of black to create the progression to the final moment.
Yeah, originally there was a lot of dialogue there between Catherine and it just didn't feel like we needed it.
no, it's you go to the scene of David. Can I find David? Please, David, come back to me. Anytime you go there trying to talk to someone with a split personality, trying to appeal to the other side, it's gonna get okay. Come on,
Yeah.
I think we went without it.
Yeah.
It didn't.
Less is more.
Less is more in
we,
that.
we definitely tried drafts where, you talk and split personalities, and it just always felt, for me it was the fatal attraction rule. It's like, you know what? It's not about explaining
No.
what the backstory is. It's about not unexplaining it. Just let me think my version of the story.
Time for school, sweetheart.
Okay.
Talk about this.
This scene,
We went through many versions of this.
Well, yeah, but, the first time in the script, it ended in the cave. That was it.
Right.
Then there was one day where you came into my office and you were like, all right, okay, listen, write a tag, because I think they might go for a tag, some kind of ending scene. And then that progressed into,
yeah.
well,
There was this scene, which we always loved from day one, and then we had a couple other ideas that'll be on the DVD as well, on the alternative ending scenes, which are great, I think, in their own way. But at the same time, when we looked at it, purely objectively, and in terms of the U.S. domestic release, this felt like the most real, the most original, and just kind of the best ending, and that is the two heads. I mean, there's no way in the world this girl has gone through what she's gone through in this film, and has come out of it unscathed. And that last image is what's come out of it unscathed, and that last image is what happened to her.
And there's the version of the one head, or just happy ending, but, I think it's good to
It
go
always
dark.
felt to me like, why come back to the scene if nothing happens? What's the point in having this scene unless it's going to be new information? And for me, the new information is she's got a problem. And if you don't want to have a problem, that's cool. Just end it at the cave. But it didn't feel right to come back and say, hey, by the way, everything's okay.
But again, thematically, the whole story has been about how people deal with trauma. And now Emily has seen her mother die, and now she's seen her father die, and she's now going to deal with that trauma too. It would be a betrayal of everything we've set up in the earlier part of the movie to not have her deal with it in some unique, interesting sort of expansion way.
It's almost like, she's been through so much death that now she's fine.
No, you couldn't do that.
Now she's crazy.
You've got to end it. It's like Carrie with the hand coming up out of the grave, or it's like any of those movies. the idea is to always end it with it expanding and exploding into a new, different direction.
Well, thank you very much for listening to the commentary, and we appreciate you being here. I'm sitting with Ari and Jeff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.